down and pan the table. And then I think we'll just dive right in.
Okay, so folks, it's 4 o'clock. So we're actually going to get started here. So thank you everybody for joining us on our new platform. You know, it's not quite the same as seeing everybody's faces and like being together, but this is what we have, and I think it's going to work great. We did some test runs this week, and this is what we're rolling with for the next couple of weeks. So I just want to let you know we are on for next week at Root Down Farm. So we're gonna take you to the farm virtually and talk about organic farming and all the important work that they're doing out there. So we have a long-term plan here. And today our presenter is Scott Lembitz, who works for Earth Spirit. And Scott, he's going to tell you all about his native plants and his medicines that he can make from native plants. So Scott, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you have a question, guys, you can do it via chat. You can hit the chat and Ron and I will ask your question for you. Or if you want to unmute your audio when Scott takes a pause, we can try that too, and we'll just see what works best. All right? So Scott, take it away.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to be here, everybody. Nice to see you, even though I can't see you. You're a cell phone on a tripod looking at me. But honestly, no, I hope you're well. I can appreciate that this is an interesting world we're living in right now, but I think that today's session should be hopefully informative, uplifting, and get you outside for a walk, teach you some basics relative to herbal preparation. I've got one of my favorites on the block today. I am going to make an immune boosting tincture. Actually, I've already done the prep work for that. I think you'll find it interesting. And I'm also going to go through the process of making a very potent herbal insect repellent. This one here is going to focus on ticks in particular, black flies, things in that nature. But I'll give you a little spin on me. I work for an organization full-time called Earth Spirit Educational Services. I'm the co-director of the organization. I've been working here about 20 years. I'm also an adjunct professor at ECC. I do field ecology coursework and work with the environmental students who are focusing on internships. I run some expedition coursework there too. But just like anybody else, I think I ended up here today simply because of a passion that I have for the natural world. I just love being outside, and I'm going to spend every living moment of my life outdoors if I can. I'm a dad. I've got 2 kids. They're 11 years old. They're awesome little ladies. They also practice and play and make medicine and lip balms and salves. And yes, I even sometimes force them to drink fresh, raw juice. It's not easy to get that down their throat. It's funny. The forum's interesting because I don't hear any response. Normally I'm interacting with people, but we'll just see how it goes. I'll try not to move around too much. Please, as we segue from kind of preparation session to preparation, throw questions in there. I will do my best to answer them for you. Okay, big picture. When it comes to herbalism or plants, I think that it's generally common knowledge that people have been coexisting and surviving because of their relationship with the plant world for as long as we've been on the planet. You know, not until later, until the 18th century, 19th century, did we get into the concept of pharmaceutical and isolating chemical compounds. But herbalism and working with plants is a completely different world, and I appreciate it because it really takes into account the synergistic approach of the plants, the soil, the world around, and how the chemical components work together. For me, getting into herbalism, I'll just give you a little brief. As a late teen, I became quite ill and ended up in the office of an iridologist who put me on a very cleansing diet and a massive amount of herbs, encapsulated herbs, tinctures. And through the course of this treatment, my body was healed. So it was really through experience that I saw the benefits of plants and herbs firsthand. And since that point in my life, I continue to create relationships with the natural world and with the plant community, and love nothing more than finding a new species that I'm not aware of. The beautiful thing about botany and herbalism, you can study this your entire life, and I think you'll always be learning. It's a very deep, rich topic. So here's what I think I'm going to do to start us off. Right from the get-go, I think I'm just going to give you a pan of my herb table. I'm going to go on the other side of my video camera. I'm going to point it down at a table, and I'll just briefly describe what you see in front of you. And then what I'd like to do is take you through some basics. Okay, and I'll do them one at a time. So if we're talking about decoctions or tinctures or salves or fomentations or poultices, what I'll try to do is give you a once over so you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to focus, I think, on things that are useful and that I use in my everyday life. First, keep it basic. And I think there's an underlying theme here for me with the humanistic connection to the plant world. And the underlying theme is, when we go outside, it's easy to walk by the botanicals that we see. You walk by a lawn, you walk through a forest, you walk into a marshland area. Maybe you're focused on wildlife. Maybe you're just out there hiking and relaxing. But I think the beauty of making this connection, heartfelt connection, a botanical identification connection, an edible connection, a medicinal connection, I think those are all critical aspects to draw me into this world and to make the relationship real. I don't walk the way I used to walk anymore. I can't. I used to be the guy who would hike and look for distance and go quickly. Those days are long gone. Now I'm the guy who breaks out his hand lens and looks at lichen closely. I'm the guy who's studying new species of moss, or who's potentially harvesting fungus and bringing it home to do some research if I don't know it, to see if there's medicinal value. So I guess my relationship has deepened over the years and will hopefully always be as deep as it is now and deeper. All right, so with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the back side, and I'm just going to bring my camera down to pan. You tell me how the view is, and then I'm going to get into, I think, creating our first immune booster tincture. Okay, you're upstairs with me in my office. It's an interesting place. There's Sally the Swan. There's my friend the otter, the wolf, the bobcat. We're an environmental education organization, so none of those animals were hunted. They were either gifts or they were purchased, and we utilize them for education. Okay, I'm going to give you a little downward tilt here on the tripod. And all I want to do is give you a look at what I set up. Over on the left side of the table here, and I'll try to get you a little tighter shot. I guess the biggest challenge for me is that I can't really pan in or zoom my lens when I'm like this. But what I've set up over here on the left is the basis for tincture making. And I'd like to give you a formal definition for tinctures. You might hear a paper shuffle from time to time. And all I'm doing is either reading some notes or going through some things that I feel are critical. I'm thinking at times you're going to see my hands reach in. I'll be doing some work. I'll be holding some objects, bringing them close to the lens so you can see them. If you're having difficulty seeing or hearing, please do me a favor, put that out there to Ron and Robin, and they'll guide you safely.
Scott, can I cut in for a second? Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Just to check in, if anyone needs to just to let us know how you're doing, you know, by chat, if you have any questions or if you have any difficulty with the screens. And Scott also has provided us with some of these recipes for you to enjoy at home. So you're going to get by email some of the lists that Scott is showing you here now. So you don't have to try to screen print this or anything. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. This is one of my personal favorites, and I've been making this tincture for years. And let me just give you an overview of a tincture. You know, herbal tinctures are technically a fluid extract of herbs and different from infusions and decoctions by replacing the water base with apple cider vinegar or oftentimes pure alcohol. I like to make all my tinctures with apple cider vinegar. Oftentimes children are involved in this and consuming these things, and a little bit of honey and apple cider vinegar makes it tolerable and I think a little more pleasant for the little ones. Tinctures get into our body very fast, almost instantly, which is great. Now, what I've done here to set up this tincture is really quite simple. I went out this morning and I was looking for a number of items. And I was thinking to myself, why don't I focus on things that people can make at home and that will definitely bolster their immune system? So I brought a table full of power hitters out. And trust me, I've been kind of working on this recipe for a long time. And when I was a young buck, I used to drink it straight. Once the mixture and all the herbal components had sat in the apple cider vinegar, I would just take it out and chug it. At that point, I wasn't using any sweetener or honey. I would recommend highly that you add honey if this is something new that you're embarking on. It'll make it a little bit more gentle on your body. And especially, you won't feel like you were in a saloon, because sometimes after drinking this stuff, I was like, whoo, this is potent. I enjoy spicy, I enjoy potent, so here's what I got for you. I'm gonna take you through the basic list, okay? I'll show you ingredient by ingredient. And I'll try to give you a little bit of an overview on what the ingredients are doing for our body. All right, number one, I'm gonna start from the bottom. I've got a huge chunk of raw garlic. When I'm putting this recipe together today, in the completed tincture bottles that I have here and here, I have 4 total chunks of raw organic garlic. Everything that I put into the product is organic. That's an important aspect of healthy lifestyle for me. I can appreciate there's oftentimes an issue with cost, but my recommendation would be, if you have the capacity to, buy all organic things or grow your own. The second item that we're going to be working with in this preparation is horseradish root. So this is it's about a 5-inch long piece of horseradish. When I made the tincture, I didn't peel the horseradish. I didn't find it necessary. I did peel the garlic. Okay. Relative to horseradish, here's some effectiveness. It's effective against flu and common cold. It's a good fighter for tonsillitis. It's awesome at fighting respiratory disorders, UTIs, and fungus. So horseradish is a power hitter. I don't know what it is, I eat horseradish all the time. The ginger that I just showed you right here, this is used to treat arthritis, muscle pain, upset stomach, upper respiratory infection, and cough. One of my personal favorites for an upset stomach. I have a number of friends who get seasick, and before we go out on the water, we take small slivers of ginger with a little maple syrup to cut the intensity down. And that usually keeps us in a real healthy place, or I should say, my friends, I don't seem to have that issue. Okay, now, what's so great about garlic? Treats high blood pressure, high cholesterol, coronary heart disease. It's a power hitter as far as building the immune system. It helps level out blood sugar and can be a topical fungal treatment. One of my personal favorites, and we can see historically that garlic's been used all over the world in recipes. So not only does it have culinary flavor, but also indeed has health benefits. I've got onions in here. Onion is a great anti-inflammatory agent. I like that about it. It's good for cardiovascular health and benefits connective tissue and bone density. So as we're focusing on the immune system, I think all of these have great merit. One of the most recent additions to this recipe, for me on a personal level, is turmeric, and it makes a great difference. It's funny, when I was a youngster, maybe 20, I never seemed to have an issue with sore joints or things like that, inflammation. Now that the pages have turned a little bit, I find more and more that that might be an issue for me. And this is one of the plants in particular, this tuber of turmeric, that I like to use as an anti-inflammatory. It's also, you ready for this one? It really is one of my favorite powerhouse plants. It's antiviral, antibacterial, anti-cancer, antifungal, and will delay long-term liver damage in those who are struggling with those issues. So do a little homework on turmeric. Appreciate that. It is a power hitter. That one in particular is what gives our tincture this really deep orange color. And we know that turmeric historically has been used by people in India and also has great digestive benefits to it. You see the fruit here. I'm shooting for vitamin C and anti-cancer agents in the organic orange and the organic lemon. When I'm processing this, I want you to appreciate that I am taking off the skin of the orange and the lemon. So if you're curious, once this all gets mixed together, do I just throw it in whole? No, for this particular tincture, I'm taking the skin off of both. Although the lemon skin, if you were to put it in there, would not be something that would adversely affect you. Orange peel, on the other hand, not so good to put raw into the body. Some of my favorites right here. We need some fire in this recipe. Anything that has capsicum is real potent. So hot peppers are going to be an essential. If you can get fresh raw cayenne peppers, I would recommend that first. And in this case, when I'm processing, all I'm doing is I'm removing the stems. I am blending the seeds in with the tincture. Okay, now down on the table right here, I've got the actual ingredient list and the quantity that you should have. Okay, and I'm just going to read the bottom so you have a sense for what this says. Okay, my instructions are, in a food processor, chop the horseradish, ginger root, add the coarse onion, peeled garlic, the hot peppers. I might recommend wearing gloves depending on how hot your peppers are. I also like to dice up the turmeric, and I'll put all of that into a 2-quart food processor. So everything's getting running and getting chopped up. I don't add any liquid to it initially. What I like to do is to have the blades from the processor just macerate the mixture. Then toward the end of that, when I have all the solid, harder ingredients, what I like to do is then I'll dice the orange peeled, dice the lemon peeled, and I'll blend that into the mixture. Now at that point, I've got a big food processor full of chopped up tubers, roots, all kinds of goodies here. What's next? But what I like to do is this, is I'd like to actually empty my food processor into a bowl, and then I'm going to take the preservative or the solvent, which is raw apple cider vinegar. Some of you may be familiar with a product called Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Wegmans sells a great product here. It also is raw, unfiltered, and unpasteurized. So essentially, it's the same product as Bragg's. You get a little bit more for a little less money. So I've opted to head in this direction lately. So if I were to take you through the step process, things have been macerated and ground up to a coarse point. I've added my liquid-bearing fruits that are high in vitamin C. Now that's in a bowl. I'll take the entire volume here. This is 1 quart, 8 fluid ounces. I'll take the entire 1.5 quarts here, and I will saturate my chopped up mixture. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm putting in 1.5 quarts of liquid on top of all this coarse ground material that I want to extract from, because that's the whole point. The acetic acid is going to draw and become the solvent and remove all the chemical components from all of these. And what I'll do next is typically, I like to wait about 2 weeks. I will cover my material, my plant material, with apple cider vinegar. This is one that I made very, very early this morning. So I wanted to show you how it came out. So it's pretty chunky, it's fairly coarse. There's a little separation in the vinegar. But the good news is, you know, ideally what I like to do is have a good yield of liquid when this is done, because what I'm going to end up doing, and usually I like to wait at least a week before I dip into this tincture. I could wait as long as a month, but I think a week minimum will be helpful so that you can extract all the benefits from the plants that are down here in front of me. Okay, so in the jug, I've got the vinegar, I've got the macerated plant. Now this is going to sit like this in a dark cupboard in my house. I don't need to refrigerate this. And every single day, I'm just going to pull it out and I'm going to shake it to expose new surface area, obviously to draw more of the chemical components out. After the course of the week, or in some cases 2 weeks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that whole jar and I'm going to set up a little strainer using muslin or cheesecloth. And I want to strain out all the plant material. I like to use cheesecloth. If I double it over, I find that I can actually wrap my hand around it real tight and squeeze any excess liquid out of there. And then what I'll do is I'll take that liquid that I've removed and I'll put it back in glass containers, and then I'll store that. Typically, I'll store that in my refrigerator, and that will stay good for a year or more. Now, I missed one important point right there. Before I put that in the fridge, yeah, I just heard my daughter Aurora say, "Dad, what about the honey?" At that point, what I'm going to do, when I've got the liquid extracted from the plant material's been removed, what I like to do is add to this mixture 1 cup of raw native honey. Okay, and I have some raw honey right here that I like to use. And I like to use everything raw because the pasteurization process or the heating process often will diminish effectiveness and certain properties that we're looking for in the plants. Okay, you can honey that to taste. That's what I would recommend. If it tastes too intense for you, because that's a pretty power-packed recipe right there, then add some more honey. Okay. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break and I'm going to shift gears. And what I'd like to do is just briefly explain to you what an infusion is, talk about a poultice, applying plants to the skin, and then I'd like to begin preparation of our second recipe together. And in this case, what I'm going to do is we're going to make the Earth Spirit insect repellent that's really focused on ticks. because I know me in the field, I've been out in the field so much, and unfortunately, there's not much we can do if we get into areas that are loaded with ticks. The best thing I think we can do is A, be conscious, do conscious tick checks, and then B, obviously have our body covered with repellents from natural essential oils that insects, in particular ticks, don't like. So
Scott,
the focus.
could I pause you just a minute, Scott? This is Robin.
Please do.
I wanted to take a minute to see if anyone had a question about the tincture section. It's a really interesting recipe, and just see if anyone had questions or thoughts on that. I'm just sorry, I lost my video there. I'll give you my video. Does anyone have, and you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you want to do that by chat. I'm just going to take a second here, take a little pause. I see some people themselves, so go ahead and just try not to talk over each other. Just let each other.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I've got you. This is Scott. Who am I speaking to?
Tom?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good. First one, can you tell us who the herbalist was that you went to?
I can tell you her first name. Her first name was Alice.
Alice. Yeah, I know her. Okay, good. And second is where do you get the correlations with all the medicinal properties for the different?
Scott, let me interrupt you. Oh, we lost your video for a sec, but it's back. Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just readjusting a camera. Well, Tom, I'll tell you, there's a couple of things that I do typically. I have a pretty massive library of botanical books and books focused on herbalism. That's a main source for me. So I go back to where I started. And I have some excellent books that I would be happy to share with you. I'll pan over my my resources that I've utilized for this. So I'm looking for chemical compounds, and Tom, I'm not sharing all the hardcore details. I'm not getting into
right. That would be a whole separate
intensive chemistry.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But there are a couple things that I do. I will utilize books. I will use favorite websites that I have, and I got to be honest with you. I use me as a test subject. I find that for myself, if I want to talk about this and teach something or share something with somebody, I better have some experience in utilizing it on my own body. So if I've got negative or really extremely positive reactions, I can also share that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. I have a couple of books, and I really am not that, haven't really used them as much as I should, but I have some of that information. I just kind of tend to look things up online as well. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else?
Hi, Scott. It's Rob.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
We have a question. Somebody was wondering if we were in the class today, would we be able to sample this concoction?
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. If there were people here right now with me, we would definitely consume this.
All right, great. Thanks.
I don't know about you. This might sound funny. I utilize this same tincture oftentimes as a dressing for greens, and oftentimes I'll even utilize some of this for pasta.
And if anyone wants to ask at a later time, I have sampled a few of these in one of Scott's classes, so I can tell you about that experience firsthand.
Yeah. I like that smile on your face, Ron. I can see you. It takes me back to that day. Can we grow turmeric in New York? I see a question on the screen here. I got to be honest with you. I don't know anybody in the area of all the people who I know who are organic farmers who are currently growing turmeric here. I think the potential is good, though. I know that wild horseradish grows here. You can find that out botanically. Wild garlic grows here. Wild ginger grows here. We've got types of wild onions. So even though I don't definitely know from experience, my thoughts are that it's possible. I think you could probably just take that root right there and propagate that rootstock. But again, that's not a definitive, so that's the best I have for you.
We have a couple of gardeners here. Anyone have familiarity with growing turmeric? No. Okay. Okay, we had one request here. I see Ron was noting in the chat, guys, if you are not signed in with your actual name, sorry to break the momentum here, but just make sure that you type your name in the chat just so we know that you're here, okay? So Ron can put you in the attendance sheet. So we'll take just one more little pause in case anyone has another question, and then Scott, we can move on.
Awesome. You just let me know when you're ready to go. And I think what I'll do next is, we'll just cover broadly the concept of the preparation of essential oils. Because oftentimes friends might call me up and ask me, they say, am I making an infused oil or do you want me to use an essential oil? And what's the difference? So I think it's worthy just going through the process right here. Okay,
okay,
I'm going to show you.
Scott, we have a couple questions that just popped up. If you don't mind
Sure.
me running by you, and then we'll
No, it'd be great, Robin.
one is, hi Scott, how many herbal combinations did you go through to reach the tincture you showed us? Is it possible to even tell us that?
Oh, sure. I would say this. When I actually started out with the recipe, I had no citrus in the recipe. I had no turmeric in the recipe and no honey. So I was bouncing around with more of the plant material and the tubers, understanding that the tubers were real powerhouse for my immunity. And at that point, that was a rugged brew. Yeah, none of my friends would drink it with me, and I don't blame them. The citrus helps. It adds a nice flavor. The honey cuts the really strong, potent aspects of especially the horseradish and the ginger. The horseradish is the kicker, but truthfully, I find it to be one of the most beneficial components of the recipe.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, we have one last question here. Can you use it on a dog with Lyme disease? I know my understanding is that raw garlic is not good for dogs, but Scott, if you could weigh in on your thoughts with pets with this type of medicine.
I would say this, with Lyme, you often have accompanied massive inflammation of the joints. That's usually a heavy symptom. I might, instead of utilizing this entire recipe right here, to be safer, what I would do is probably begin with turmeric and extracts of turmeric. I may even try to use turmeric that's encapsulated or in a gel for an animal so that they're not dealing with the challenging flavors. I personally feel like this recipe is a little bit too intense and has too much going on to be able to read the impact on my dog. I have a dog too, and I have the same concerns, so I can appreciate this. I think I would opt for a gentler approach with this. Work on the inflammation. I might even recommend, I've got an herbal tincture here that I use oftentimes, and it's a parasitic cleanse and it's a giardia cleanse. And sometimes when I think that my dog's gotten into something that might be causing her some illness, I'll often use this product on it. It has black walnut in it, and that's a real power hitter. Ginger root, black walnut. Yeah, so you're just getting my opinion about the dog, but I would think this, if I were going to introduce this into a canine species, what I would do is do it ingredient by ingredient with something flavorful, or encapsulate the product and bury it in something that you're feeding the dog. That'd be my recommendation.
Excellent. And we have another question. How often do you recommend using these products? For example, the tincture for the immune system boost. Are you using this every day? What is your
every day? Yeah. I'd recommend taking this immune booster twice a day. If you can tolerate a tablespoon a time, then take a tablespoon. I try to take a tablespoon in the morning and a tablespoon in the evening before bed. It doesn't seem to have any impact on keeping me awake or anything like that. In the morning, it's a Kickstarter though. My body feels it when it enters, my bloodstream.
Great.
You can say, like, for me on a personal level, I'll back off of this tincture in the summertime when the likelihood of illness is much less likely. I don't seem to get sick so much in the summer. Typically, it's going to be winter time or late fall. So I try to really jump on the bandwagon here with the immune booster sometime around mid-October. And that's when I'll start. And I'll try to take that right through to the tail end of March. And in addition to that, in my own personal world, what I like to do as part of my routine is get up in the morning and also juice fresh greens, kale, celery, cucumber, and raw vegetables, raw carrots. I make a whole bunch of different juicing combinations. So I'm just trying to get the enzymatic properties there from the juice. And if I'm boosting my immune system with the tincture, my personal feeling is I'm helping.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. I just want to check in and say, we have 29 people signed into this class. There's only 26 people in the class, so you have a great audience. lots of folks here enjoying your work today.
Oh, that's awesome. I wish I could see Walt. I really do. Maybe at some time. I'll tell you what I've got. My setup is like this. I have my cell phone mounted on a tripod with a little light bar over my phone. And it's not a real high-tech thing I have going on here. So I can see 4 windows on my screen. Okay, now, Robin, you let me know if you're ready to shift gears, and I think what we'll do is we'll whip up an essential oil-based insect repellent.
Excellent, we are ready.
All right, great. I'm just gonna make a minor adjustment on the camera. Okay, I'm gonna slide over there. And when my human body gets over on that side of the table, do me a favor, just let me know if I'm in your screen, if you've got me okay. If my head is cut off or something, and I'll just make an adjustment, but I think I should be in good shape. Okay, I'll be right with you. Okay, how's this for position? You got me okay?
Yeah, we're losing the very top of your head, but we can see.
Okay. No, let's go. I'll bring it up just a little. Better?
Better.
Awesome. All right, I'm back. This is Oscar. Ginger and garlic. He's recommending every day take your dose. All right, friends. I did send Robin a copy of this Earth Spirit Insect Tick Repellent. We've had a couple of very interesting names for this concoction over the years. I love to work with kids, and I like letting the children name our products that we use, because essentially we use them on ourselves, we use them on our families, we use them on our dogs, and everybody we hang out with. And Earth Spirit, being an educational organization, oh my goodness. I'm usually outside all summer long, every single day with a group of kids or a group of adults. I've gotten clobbered with ticks before myself. You can ask me any kind of horror story about ticks at a later date if you'd like to. I've got plenty of them. But they're the one that really concerns me the most. They obviously, the impacts of ticks and Lyme disease and the Lone Star tick are something that none of us want to have to deal with. So, big picture, let's keep them off our body. This is the protocol that I recommend for students when we're out in the field. Ticks don't really jump down off of trees onto your head. They're more congregated on shrubbery, low ground plants. So even in the summertime myself, when my human body wants to be wearing shorts, I'll wear real light nylon pants. Depending on what the situation is, I might even tuck my pants into my socks. That way, if I do get the tick on my body, maybe I'll catch it visually as it's crawling on my legs. I wear light colored tan. This is part of our uniform at work. Tan with a little brown or little black tick on it shows up great. I've had numerous children see ticks on my shirt, tell me, and spare me from the misery that comes with that. But my personal feeling is what we really want to do with this is we want to douse our boot area, spray our boot, sock, leg area. My t-shirts or my long sleeve shirts, they get tucked in so the ticks can't get from my waistline underneath my clothing. Usually if I'm having any issue, this is going to sound a little bit disgusting, but this is the truth. If I've ever had ticks crawling on me, it's either been on my hands because they're uncovered or on my neck, on the back of my neck, because they're working their way up my legs, up my torso, and then they're finding open, warm attachment points up here. So obviously I'm going to douse my neck heavy, face, behind my ears, and my hairline, and I spray this right in my hair too. I know it sounds extreme, but you walk around smelling nice, and that's a beautiful thing because this mixture here smells great. Okay, so pretty easy, and this is, let's just say you were sitting up here in the office with me. This is exactly the way I would do it with you, okay? And what I would do is I'm going to run through the list of essential oils, and I want you to appreciate that essential oils are concentrated oils that have gone through the process of distillation to remove the water from the plant. So super concentrated, very potent, and we certainly have to use caution when we're dealing with essential oils as not to get them on our hands and then touch our mucous membranes, our inside of our eyes or our mouth, because they are potent. I usually will have students, if I'm going to apply this or ask them to apply, just to cover their eyes with their own hands. Do one of these, okay? Pull their lips in so they're not getting it on their mouth. And then we soak them down pretty well. I find this to be extremely effective, truthfully. Okay, so here we go. This is what I've got for the basic recipe, okay? These small brown bottles are all essential oils, and they're all very potent, and they go a long way in making numerous batches of the tick repellent. Okay, and I'm going to just first give you a list. Okay, I'm going to be using, and this is my #1 for ticks. I love it. It's definitely effective. I got to throw a disclaimer. Just because I have this on my body, this tick repellent, doesn't mean that I'm not going to get bitten by bugs or ticks. All I'm doing is my best to try to keep them off my body. Okay, so I start out with rose geranium essential oil. You may look online and get some good information about geranium oil. It seems to be the one that ticks like the least. So I'm going to make that a lead ingredient. Then I'm going to use cedar wood essential oil from the northern white cedar tree. And lucky where I live, I've got some white cedar here, but I will buy the essential oil as opposed to make my own. I'm going to use peppermint essential oil. Yes, you'll smell good, but yes, peppermint is a powerhouse when it comes to keeping black flies away. They seem to hate it. Mosquitoes don't love peppermint. Next, I'm going to drop into Citronella Essential Oil. I think just about everybody knows citronella, or you know somebody who's been burning citronella candles to get that oil up in the air to keep the insects away. I think probably one of my favorites in this recipe is lemon balm oil. It has a beautiful scent to it, makes it very appealing to me, and it is incredibly effective at covering the gambit of biting insects. I'm also going to utilize eucalyptus. And with that said, I think we're just going to start. Now, the measurement of this is going to be pretty easy. Each one of these bottles, these essential oil bottles, has a little dropper top on top. And all I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take the top off. I'll show you the dropper top. That's what I mean right there. That little white top. Okay, and then when I start to actually add essential oils, I got my Pyrex glass cup here. And what I've done already is I've put 16 ounces of spring water, purified water, into this jug. I didn't use tap water. You certainly can use tap water if you'd like to. Okay, so I'm starting out with 16 ounces of water. That's the beginning. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my rose geranium. Okay, and the rose geranium oil, I'm going to take this bottle and I'm going to put 60 drops in there, or the equivalent of. Appreciate this. If I had to make this in quantity, I would remove the stopper tops and I would be measuring into teaspoons, tablespoons, or what I needed to achieve the result I was looking for. But for today, I thought, you know, this is what most people will have in their hands. It's what they're going to get from the store or get shipped to their house. So I'm going to just go away and drop 60 or close to 60 into this spring water, okay? You can count with me if you want.
So guys, this would be a good time for questions while we count to 60 with Scott. Or just take a moment to pause and practice your yoga breathing.
Yeah, deep breathe into the belly. Okay, so I've got 60 drops of rose geranium in there, and I'm going to go right ahead and just continue the process. I know this is going to be very boring for you to watch, so you please feel free to ask any questions you want to. So cedar wood's my next. I love cedar wood, northern species. I rub cedar on myself. If I don't have this with me and I'm up in the North Country, I'll actually take some boughs, fresh greenery, crush it in my hands, and apply it as a poultice over my skin so that the cedar oil is on the exterior of my body, acting as a repellent. Okay, peppermint's next. I'm going to go 60. We're going big with peppermint too. So appreciate this. You're going to basically have a whole bunch of diluted essential oils. Gotta stop talking and count. Now, what if I only put in 59 drops and not 60? What if I put in 63 drops instead of 60? Inconsequential in the big picture. Okay, not really an issue. That's kind of a bonus in my world. Okay, so these are who we have. We've got cedar wood in there already. We've got geranium. We've got peppermint. Okay, we're going to put citronella in. Make sure you ask me a question about tea tree. I will mention tea tree, but I had a negative experience. I made a batch of this with tea tree in it one time. And when I applied the spray to my body, that was the only thing I changed in the recipe. I found that I was experiencing a burning sensation on my skin. It wasn't like horrific, but I noted, you know, tea tree is very effective as an antifungal, antibacterial. It's an antiviral power hitter. I use it all the time. And I was thinking, I wonder if I cut some tea tree into this, if it will help. But the answer was no. So epic fail on that one. Again, I used myself as the guinea pig, and I'm glad I did. Okay, I'm gonna bring in one of my favorites, lemon balm, member of the mint family, and I'm gonna give you 40 drops of this.
So folks, while Scott's doing that, I just want to remind you we are recording this. So if you want to share this, Scott, is it okay if people share this with friends and relatives?
Sure.
Okay. So
You feel free.
You know, in addition to Scott's recipes, we'll also share this video, or if you missed any parts and want to go back and see them, That works pretty well. I also see we had 4 more people signed in since we checked in last. Folks, if you are not signed in under your name, please put your name on so we under the chat so that we have that for attendance.
Okay. My last
also
is one of my favorites. Another essential oil that we use in our house all the time, especially for respiratory issues here. Like I say, about a month ago, we had some illness running through our house, and we were rocking the eucalyptus in our, what do you call that? Putting the moist spray up in the air. Yeah, we were diffusing eucalyptus, and it was very helpful. I found it, even though I was not ill, I found it to be very pleasant on my body.
We have a question from Nick, Scott.
Sure.
Nick wants to know, if you're going to get these oils and you're new to this, where would you go to buy them? Where do you recommend?
That's a good question. Nick, your closest option, or my closest option, if we're local here in Western New York, there are health food stores and herb stores that are well stocked in essential oils. When I'm in a pinch and I can't find the ones I want to get online, I usually will utilize Feel Right Food Store as an option to find all these. I want you to appreciate this. Everything that's in front of you right here, all these oils are organic. And I bought all of these oils, these right here, and the supplies to house what I'm making on a website called apothecary.com. And I think they're exceptional. You can find just about everything you want to get in organic, wildcrafted herbs. They're one of my personal favorites. What I like is you can get the herbs, you can get the oils, and you can also get the things you'd like to put them in. So, for example, if you want to make a salve, plantain salve for dealing with stings and cuts and scrapes, you can buy your own little tins and you can make yourself 25 tins of plantain salve and share it with your friends or give it away as a gift. I like that aspect of this personally, that if I want to make something at home, it doesn't really cost me a great deal of money to just be able to make something for friends and family and share it with people. Okay, apothecary.com, Feel Right for essential oils. I hope that helps. I know there are plenty of other options out there, but at least locally, I think that's about the best recommendation I could give you. Okay, so now I've got my 16 ounces of water mixed with my essential oils. Still looks essentially like water. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 ounces. Looks clear, but it's thick, of organic vegetable glycerin. Okay, and the reason I'm putting the glycerin in here is because if I just put the essential oils in the water and I spray that on my skin, through the process of perspiration or running through creeks or swimming, I'm going to lose everything that I applied to my body. The glycerin will give you the ability to keep the spray on your skin longer. It's actually, you know, helping this essential oil mixture adhere to your skin. So that's the point of this. I've tried it with and I've tried it without. I certainly like it better with the glycerin in it. So I'm going to take 2 ounces of glycerin. And in this case, just to make it simple, I'm going to simply measure out 2 tablespoons, liquid tablespoons here, add it to the mixture. Then I'm going to pour this mixture into a mason jar. I'm going to shake it like crazy so that everything is dispersed throughout. And then what I'll do is I'll pour those off into a couple of blank bottles here, just so you can see the kind of products that are available and stuff that I think have been effective. Okay, and if you have questions, you please feel free to ask as I'm going through the process here. So tablespoon number 1, and it's very thick. And number 2. Okay, now you can see I used Pyrex that has a pour spout on it, and that was intentional because I realized I'm going to pour this into a mason jar. My hope is I don't make a big mess here. I will return in a sec here. I'm going to come right back with a mason jar. We'll pour it in, we'll shake it up, and then the next step, and I don't think I need to go through the details of this with you, but I certainly would be happy to. Okay, the next step, get the funnel in the bottle and pour off into the bottle. Does that make sense? All right.
Scott, should people
Yep.
be careful if they tend to be allergic to things, if they tend to have allergies? Is this something they should maybe do one oil at a time, or what would you recommend for people who tend to react strongly to things for all these preparations?
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly. I think that's important, Robin. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, for you as an individual, if you're dealing with allergy issues, obviously it's a good idea to know what you're allergic to. But if I was going to invite anything new and wild into my body from the botanical world, I would start out with the smallest amount just to see if I can tolerate it. Or if I have an adverse reaction, then I would simply steer clear and take another path. Okay, I'll be right back. We're going to shake this one up and we should be ready to go. I gotta say, I love doing this because in the past in my life, in my 20s, I had a career as a culinary professional. And oftentimes when I'm making this, I go, this is really awesome. It's quite a bit like cooking and it's easy. I think if I could stress one thing to everybody is this is not rocket science. Anybody can do this. And if you try one recipe, it might just be the impetus for you to walk through the doorway and start to actually incorporate this into your daily life on a much bigger level. Okay, so into my ball jar you go. It smells absolutely delightful. I'm gonna just put a lid on. I'm gonna shake it. I'm just shaking it to mix thoroughly. So at this point, what I would be doing is I would get my setup ready like this with a funnel, and then I would be funneling into 8-ounce bottles. That's the size bottle you have there. So I've got 16 plus ounces, probably realistically about 17 ounces of liquid in here, maybe 18. It's not quite gonna fit all the way. Sometimes I short bottles intentionally so I can pour off extra into them. Okay, so there you have it, my friends, the insect and tick repellent. And I think what I'd like to do is, if it's all right with you, I'm going to segue to one more session on the table, and I'd like to talk a little bit about working with poultices. I use them frequently, and simple infusions, how we can make them. Obviously, when we're talking about herbalism, and if we're doing a wild harvest from the field, and the field is anywhere outside. So if I'm on my own property and I'm doing a wild harvest from the field, by law, I have the right to do whatever I want to do. I can pick any plant on my own land here. But ethically, I just want you to appreciate some considerations that I'll put into my own world before I go out and actually harvest or wild harvest. If I find a plant community and I'm interested in a plant, let's say I find cutleaf toothwort. That's a great edible that has a horseradish-like flavor. Before I go to that group of plants, I'm just going to size them up, and I understand that when I go in there, and this may sound odd to you, but I'm going to sit quietly and I'm going to try to make a connection with those plants, and I'm going to just, whether it's in my mind or out loud, express my gratitude for what the plants are sharing with me. And I'm going to avoid being greedy. If I could say a percentage, I'm not going to harvest more than 10% of the plants that I find there. We're talking about sustainability here a little bit. And if we want to sustain those wild harvest spots, it only makes sense to approach delicately, consume minimally, and be grateful. These are approaches that have been used in collection of herbs for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So I like the thought, and I like the thought of simply being grateful. On some level, I can't speak for anybody else, but it seems to open the door to my relationship with those plants. I value what they share with me. Hopefully, they feel the love and the gratitude I send to them. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go back around to the other side of the table. And
Scott, if we could ask a couple questions real quick.
oh, sure, my friend. You know what? I'm going to go back around the other side so maybe I can see a face or two. And I'll take some questions and then we'll jump into the next segment here, okay?
We have
see you,
one.
Ronnie.
They were wondering, do the essential oils work better, in your opinion, than DEET or a commercial bug spray for mosquitoes?
Here's my consideration with that, and I'm glad. That's a great question. DEET is a carcinogenic chemical. DEET with long-term exposure causes cancer. I specifically removed DEET from the equation because of that. The health implications for me on a personal level and dealing with children all the time outweigh the efficacy of DEET. I have buddies who are military guys who make wisecracks about using 100% DEET when they're in deep in areas where they're just getting crushed and say that it is effective. If you wanted me to go one way or the other and said, hey, what do you think about DEET versus the herbs? I'd say this, that the herbal remedies are going to be less effective than 100% DEET. And I only know that from the people I hang out with. We've done side-by-sides before. You slather yourself in DEET, okay, Bob? And I'm going to use my herbal armor here. And truthfully, I usually get favored by the mosquitoes. So, but that being said, I want you to appreciate this. The more important issue for me is the carcinogenic capacity of DEET. I want to get away from that in my life. I don't want to eat poisoned food. I don't want to put poisonous chemicals on my body. I want to drink clean water. And I think that those are probably primary concerns for a lot of us. So, you know, that being said, if you're in it to win it and it's the middle of May and you're in the North Country up in Ontario and there are so many black flies that you can't even see your skin, I could appreciate your desire to have 100% DEET. Not me. Give me a bug suit or a head net and some herbal product. That's the direction that I would go. But yeah, they both have their effectiveness. Kind of depends on what your priorities are personally.
If
Sure.
I could throw in a comment on that regard, I know there's been water quality studies of campgrounds, and I'll see if I can look up the location for you guys, but I know there's been streams that are heavily used by campers and kids where you can actually measure the amount of DEET in the water from, you know, kids bathing and splashing in that water when they're covered in DEET. So it is definitely a concern that needs to be weighed, you know, especially working with children.
No DEET. No DEET.
Also,
Yeah.
my dog is notorious for getting ticks. I've already pulled a couple off her this year. Is this effective on our four-legged friends too?
Yeah, Ron, we can, you know, same with my dog. I got to be honest with you. 2 nights ago, I just pulled a big dog tick off of her. And what I did right after that, I treated the location of the tick with tea tree. So right away, what I went after was antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral killer on site. So I removed the tick with tweezers, flushed the tick down the toilet, applied tea tree, and then gave her whole body. I take her hair and I start at the tail and I follow my hand so I can get down under underneath the hair, and then I'll rub that right into her coat. Yeah, and it's a little bit intense in the beginning for the dog. I can see the first, 5 minutes because it is, it's potent, it's strong, but it's pleasant. My dog always smells nice. The thing with dogs, you guys who are all dog owners and dog lovers out there, just like we would do with our siblings or our children, we have to really take a look at that physical body every day. I see, because my dog's head is down, right? Her head is down closest to the ground. She'll get them on her cheeks. They'll go up behind her ears. They'll get on her neck. Those seem to be the dominant places that I'm finding them on my dog. So I make it a point every day to give her a little massage. Macy loves that. And at the same point in time, I can feel the ticks on her skin if they're there. And then I'll go after them. How's
Awesome.
that?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay,
Scott,
cool.
If I could just throw in, just in case anyone hasn't noticed, there's a little bit of a side conversation going on relative to DEET in the group chat, which is super cool. We've got one of our participants, I'm not sure who, but is posting some really interesting fact sheets from CDC on DEET and DEET toxicity, some kind of cool stuff there. If you want a resource, just go to your chat and click those links.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to make my camera disappear for just a second. You won't see me. You'll have audio if you need it. I'm going to reposition. I'd like to talk briefly about poultices. I use them frequently. I'd also like to just give you an overview of salve making and lip balm making. I'm not going to go through the process with you, though. It's quite easy. Maybe another time we can get into that one a little more intensively. And then after we finish the table talk here, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you outside before it starts raining up here. I'm out in the southern tier and we got a pretty gloomy sky, but the weather's still warm and relatively beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to disappear and I will be right back. Thanks.
So if anyone has any questions while Scott's disappearing, this is a good time to mull things over. You can also unmute yourself if you wish. Hopefully we will get Scott's camera back here shortly. I do want to mention to the ECC students who are joining us, first of all, we are going to have a short ECC only meeting, after this class. And I want to mention to you guys, if I don't think any of you have taken a class with Scott. Scott runs the field ecology class at ECC. It's a great class. And you guys cover a lot of good ground outside. So I recommend that for you in the fall and the future.
Gotta love being outside though. All right, Ronnie?
Oh, yeah.
We usually will go through it all. Ron, were you in that class I did when it was like 10 below zero and we built a Quincy outside?
No, not that one.
Okay, you lucked out on that then.
Yep.
Yeah, 10 below. But it's nice. I find that people who like nature and who like the environment usually are willing to go the miles, especially if they, have the proper gear to keep them warm and safe. Okay, so hopefully you see what I got in front of you. If you can't see it closely, I've just got the basics for a salve preparation station. And making an herbal salve is simple. It's something that I would apply topically to my body. I would never be consuming these internally. And usually, I'll tell you what I find to be the number 1, 2, or 3 things that we're using herbal salves for at my house. I like to make a chickweed salve to treat burns. In addition, we have aloe vera plants that we have here, but I can certainly carry the chickweed salve with me. Number 2, I always make a plantain-based salve. Plantain, antimicrobial, antibiotic, is incredible with stings. I had an ill-fated day when I was tearing apart an eave on my house and the hornets came out of that eave and they blasted me. Hey, Robin, I think you might have had that experience too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we both been there. So, but I was stung multiple times in the cheek and the neck and the face and the head, and I had to go to work and was really concerned. I iced down the sting sites, but it wasn't until that I picked about 100 leaves of Lanceleaf Plantain from the lawn, put them into my food processor with a tablespoon of olive oil, and then put that paste all over my injured, stung up area. After that, with a combination of ice and that plantain, in about an hour, I was able to open my eye again, and the swelling diminished substantially. So I used plantain all the time, and I use it in the field as a pick and crush and apply, or in a form that I can transport it. So if I want to use it in the winter, I can do that. Okay. So relative to making an herbal salve, I want you just to appreciate you've got liquid components and solid components. And when I'm making an herbal salve, I usually will go in a similar direction. I'll give you an example. In this small container that I just put out here, I'm going to open it up, and there are marigold flowers in here, calendula. And marigold is incredible for the skin. It's also good for burns. It's also good for scratches. It's also good for bites or irritation, psoriasis, eczema. So it's very valuable. So with the sustainability component in bringing these plants to our house, maybe you're wondering, hey, I wonder if this guy plants marigold at his house when he's planting his organic vegetables. Well, the answer is yes. And I'm going to do that specifically so that I can make this. Okay. And what I'm doing here is I've taken that container that I filled with olive oil, and then I put in a whole bunch of dried marigold petals. So what I'm really doing is I'm infusing the chemistry from the marigold flower into the oil. Then before I turn this oil into a salve, I'm going to remove the plant material. So I'm going to strain out the flowers. Okay, and I'll be left with a golden colored oil. Okay, now that's just an example of how I can take a plant, extract the chemicals, not using something harsh like alcohol or acetic acid. It can be a gentle approach because this is going to go on my skin. Olive oil is extremely healthy for our skin. So whenever I'm making a salve, usually what I end up doing is this. Whatever it is that I'm trying to infuse into an oil, I'll use a fresh organic olive oil, whether it's in a glass bottle or a metal container. I use both, depending on what
Can
part
I
of the
ask a
body.
question?
Sure.
Obviously, there's different chemicals you extract whether you use water or olive oil. So,
Absolutely.
I take it that what you're extracting from the marigold are organic compounds?
They certainly are. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's really critical what you use then, either aqueous or non-aqueous solvents.
That's right. And, you know, in this regard, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but the oil itself is going to be the vehicle that will allow penetration into my skin. So it's taking the medicinal compounds and the chemical compounds from outside through the oil. The oil is getting into my epidermal layers, and that's how the chemicals get into my body. So I hope that makes sense. But oftentimes, another component or another oil I like to use when I'm making a salve or a lip balm is coconut oil. Sometimes I'll cook with coconut oil. Sometimes I'll just consume raw coconut oil. But at least for me, and this is not the only direction to go, everybody, I want you to know that there are a lot of pathways to making herbal salves. But I find this to be the most effective for my daily needs and the daily needs of our clan here. So what I'll typically do, and I'll give you just an off-the-cuff recipe. Okay, hang on one sec.
So Scott, we have a couple of questions while you're grabbing something. Is this a good time to ask?
Oh, sure. You feel right. You jump right in there.
Okay, so we have Mark Anthony would like to know if olive oil is the best choice for skin salves. I know you've talked about a couple different oils. Is that the one that you recommend?
You know, shea butter is really awesome. Coconut oil is very good. Olive oil is very good. All of those three, those would be in my top three that I would recommend. All have healing components and properties for our skin. And obviously, if you're going to do this, you know, again, I would just stay away from anything that has a GMO base to it. Stick with organic oils. I hope that helps.
Great, thanks. We also have someone
Okay.
asking about coconut oil, antibacterial properties of coconut oil, which I think you already mentioned.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I've made so many salves, and when I started making salves, I was primarily using olive oil only, and then I started to blend in other oils. I love the coconut oil combination. It adds a different texture, and if I'm making a lip balm, I can actually taste it in the lip balm itself. You know, there isn't much difference than what's in this tube right here. I'll just open this up. This is a lip balm that we made recently here. And I furnished everybody with a recipe for this exact lip balm. It's a peppermint-based lip balm, but it simply is this: organic olive oil, coconut oil, unbleached natural beeswax, and peppermint oil. And we can flavor these however we would like to. I personally enjoy the peppermint, so my kids like it, so we just make that one probably our priority, okay? So understand that what's in this tube right here and the salve are essentially the same thing, different words for the same thing. You can use the word balm, B-A-L-M. Some people think that all balms are a petroleum-based ointment, and that's not always the case. I think we use different jargon in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, okay? So for making a basic salve, I'll give you a basic recipe, okay? 6 ounces of olive oil, warmed to under 120 degrees Fahrenheit when I'm heating. I've got a cast iron skillet back here and a single burner that if I'm doing this out elsewhere, I want to get together with people, this is how I'll put this together, okay? So 6 ounces of olive oil, 2 ounces of coconut oil. So essentially, what do we have there? 3-to-1 ratio. So we've got those liquids, and depending on what kind of an herbal salve I'm going to make, let's say today I wanted to make a Calendula Salve. I strain the plant material. I incorporate this oil as part of my 6 ounces of olive oil, and then I'll stretch the recipe with coconut or shea butter. So I've got my liquid in and it's warm, less than 120 degrees. And the key to actually bringing this to a point where you can carry it around, where you can put it in a container, you can put it in a tin, or you can put it in a tube, is to simply thicken that infused oil mixture with unbleached natural beeswax. And this is my preference. I wondered way back when I first started doing this, if I buy chapstick, why is it always clear and white? They're using a bleached wax product in that. My preference is to use an unbleached natural organic beeswax. So that's the way I go. It will also color your salve. It'll give it a deep hue. That's kind of an indicator of quality for me if I'm looking at things. Okay, now how much, if I've got that 8 ounces of oil in my skillet back here and I'm heating, how much of this do I actually need to thicken it up? There's a couple things I'll take into consideration. Season being one. If it's the summer and I'm making salves or lip balms, I understand it's going to be hot a majority of the time. If I'm carrying them around, they're going to be hot. So I'm going to make them thicker than I would typically, okay? And in that regard, usually, depending on the season, your thickening with the beeswax will run between 1 and 2 ounces, okay? I will go the 2-ounce direction in the warm weather season. If I have plant material in that salve, okay, like this in particular, I've extracted the marigold here. What I like to do is this. I like to put a vitamin E preservative into that mixture, okay? If I'm making a salve that, let's say for example, I just used olive oil and I did not use an infused oil, okay? Instead, the lip balm I want to make, I'm going to make a peppermint lip balm. So in this case, I have no live plant component in here. My concern about killing important chemical constituents is different, okay? So when I've got live, if maybe I'm making a comfrey salve, live green plant or a plantain salve, I'm always going to add a preservative to that at the end. And typically what I'll add is 20 drops of pure vitamin E oil, okay? All right, so summer salve, I've got my 8 ounces of oil, 6 of olive oil, 2 of coconut oil, melted down, or I've got my infused oil. I'm going to go heavy on the beeswax. Probably the most challenging thing about this is trying to get the consistency to the point where you want it. You can see down here where you see the word salve, there's actually a green piece of marble there. I will always bring a piece of stone with me, either a piece of granite or marble, because they hold the cold, they grab the cold and stay much cooler than ambient temperature typically. And that allows me to actually run some of the salve. I'll give you an example. Okay, let's say I had the salve and I've added my beeswax to it, about 2 ounces. Now I want to test consistency. I'll usually grab, I've got a little plunger right here. Oftentimes I'll just use a spoon. I'll go into my pot, I'll draw a little, I'll shoot it out in a line on my piece of marble. It cools quickly. I can touch it with my hands, my finger, and I can get the consistency. Is it dense enough or does it still need more beeswax added? And if the consistency feels right, then at that point, what I'm going to do is get it out of the pan I'm working in, and I'm going to put it into containers, whether I'm putting it into tins or whether I'm putting it into tubes or whether I'm putting it into jars. Okay, so for the salve making, I'll just recap that one more time. The combination of oils, 8 ounces, to the combination of beeswax thickener, 1 to 2 ounces, depending on season. If I make my salve too thick, the good news is all I got to do is add oil. If I make my salve too thin and it seems watery, I can thicken it and head the other way with the unbleached natural beeswax. Okay, I find salve making to be just a blast, and I make quite a few of them, and I use a lot of them. Plantain, calendula, comfrey salves. Geez, I've got a whole bunch that I like to make for different applications. Okay, now I'm going to shift gears one more time, just talk briefly, show you a couple things that I think you might want. This may be a good time for questions. If you've got questions for me, I'd love to have them. Okay, I'm just swinging over here into poultice world.
So Scott, we have a couple questions here. We have our Chromebook friend, I'm not sure who that is, but would like to know about benefits of almond oil. I know that wasn't one of the ones that you recommend.
You know, it's highly beneficial, and I would put it into the same mix, Robin. I've used it before myself. I like it. The oils are kind of an interesting personal thing. What I like to say is, you know, how does your body react with this? How does it feel on your skin? How about the nut component and allergies? You know, you got to weigh all those factors. But I guess it's probably important for me to just say that I'm just sharing with you some of my favorites here. But I think almond oil is an excellent option. Hey, who's that little lady there? I see a pretty little face there. You can't see me, can you? Here, I'm going to turn me around so you can see me.
So we had one other question.
Hi, Calusa.
Hi.
Good to see you, babe.
The shelf life of the salves, and our Chromebook friend is Val Tucker and Alita, and also the shelf life value of the how long do these salves last? That's Mark Anthony asking that question.
I typically will give the salve about a year of shelf life. Okay, it's got a preservative in it. It's not going to break down. But usually after a year, I think to myself, efficacy is kind of waning at this point. Time to make a new one. Although I've used them when they have been 2 years old and have had plenty of positive results. But as a general line of thought, I would say this. On an annual basis or yearly basis, maybe you go into a wild crafting session where you harvest your herbs, then you infuse your herbs in mason jars, and then you have a number of different plant components and a general time frame for you to make a whole new arsenal of good salves that you use on a maybe an annual basis. Sound good?
Great, thanks.
Okay. I'm just going to step away for a second. I'm going to plug this phone of mine back in so I don't lose you all. Okay, and I will be back in 10. Bye.
Does anyone else have questions for Scott while he's moving around? This is always a good time. If you have, you can put them up on the chat. New people that may have signed in, remember to put your name in the chat so we can have our attendance list. That's really helpful for our grantors, so they know how many people we're reaching. Yeah, if you have a question, you can chat it. We'll read it for you, or you can just unmute yourself and ask.
That's a dream come true. Unmute yourself. I wish I could have unmuted myself in school when I was a youngster. I was always being scolded. Okay, well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one last launch at the table here and show you a couple things that are around and a couple things that I might recommend. I'll give you a good story right here. Boom. I've got a species of moss called Wavy Moss. It's in the family Dicranum. We've got all kinds of moss around us, and I was initially, when I got into botany, the mosses were something that I pushed aside, but I learned to love them over the course of time and the spore-bearing plants as a whole. But a couple of years back, I was on a program. I had an intern student with me, and we were scaling down a shale waterfalls, and I sliced my hand pretty badly. I didn't have time because I had so many kid responsibilities to actually stop and treat myself immediately. And I asked my friend, all I did was put some pressure on the wound so it wasn't bleeding profusely in front of people. I asked this intern to go and find me a large patch of pincushion moss. And mosses are antibacterial and antimicrobial. Native people have used mosses, specifically sphagnum moss, as diapers, very absorbent, and they have a styptic quality to them. They can stem bleeding. So I was trying not to bleed too much in front of this group, and I was doing okay. And my friend brought me back the pincushion moss, and I used the pincushion moss directly on the wound. Washing off any soil or dirt, I actually removed everything from the bottom, poured spring water on it, crushed the moss in my hand, and placed it directly into the wound. And honestly, literally within 2 minutes, my problem was over. I wasn't bleeding anymore in front of the group, and my wound was cleaned. And obviously later when I went back to the vehicle and I could apply more intense first aid, I did that. But I find it to be a beneficial plant all the way around in the spore-bearing world. You know, when I was thinking about the plants I want to talk about today, as I went outside and I'm looking around here, spring always brings a bounty. You know, we get our native plant community living in our forest. They're called the spring ephemerals, the ones who can tolerate shade and the ones who utilize this period of time before the forest canopy opens up to actually collect sunlight, blossom, go into flower, produce fruit. I can't wait to see them. Toothworts, one of my favorites. Spring beauties, one of my favorites. The list goes on and on. Bloodroot, like I just can't wait to see these friends every year. And I was walking around my property up here and I was looking and I was waiting for trout lily. I'm dying to see Coltsfoot. Coltsfoot is a composite flower, yellow. Some might mistake it for a dandelion, but it shows no leaf at this point in the year. On the table, I have a little mixture here. Thought people might be interested in this one. I've got a mixture of two plants in combination. I have Coltsfoot, and I've harvested the leaves. This is a last summer harvest. And I have another herb called mullein. And you might know mullein if you know lamb's ear. They're quite similar. Mullein is a non-native that grows with a tall spike. The flowering head can be 6 feet tall, but the leaves are, they're very soft and very hairy, and it's a very inviting plant. But both those plants have great efficacy in respiratory ailments, especially relative to dilation of your brachii in your lungs, and also in the concept of expectorants. The mullein is a powerhouse expectorant. So you can expand and dilate your airway in your lung, and then you can actually help get the stuff out of your lung. And I brought it up because that's something that I will use from time to time if I find myself with a tough cough that I'm having a hard time getting rid of. I use cherry bark. I use slippery elm on the throat in honey. I love that. But this one is an oddball, and some people you might be looking up respiratory remedies, and you'll often find this mixture. It's a 50-50 mixture, 1-to-1, of dried mullein and dried coltsfoot leaf. And then what I like to do with this is I like to make a smudge. Or I'll take I'll give you an example. I could use this small container right here, and I could fill this with some of the herb. And then what I'll do is I'll put a long stem lighter, or maybe I'm using a stick that I'm burning this with, and I'm going to actually burn some of the green herb, but then I'm going to gently take my hand and bring that smoke into my mouth and bring it into my lungs. I'm not going to take this in deeply, and I'm not going to draw the hot smoke in, but it is extremely helpful. And again, that mixture is a coltsfoot, and I'm mentioning coltsfoot because just before I got going today, I figured I'd go outside and clear my head, and I found one in bloom. So that was a blessing. I was pretty excited about that. Okay, now my thoughts are this. We seem to be moving through our time frame pretty quickly, so I think at this point, what I'd like to do is shut my camera off, take a walk with you outside, and why don't we go visit a couple plants together? Let's make some friends. I hope that concept doesn't seem so foreign to all of us. When I know something about someone and someone knows something about me, I can create relationship. If I know how a plant can heal me and feed me, guess what? We've created relationship. And that's a beautiful thing. And one of my teachers taught me that a long time ago. It's our responsibility to actually go out there and participate. And then you get the fever, and then you get obsessed, and then you're starting to ID everything. And then before you know it, you feel uncomfortable. You know who the trees are, who the plants are, who the shrubs are. And it's a natural process. You turn the page and you go, wow, all right, well, who can I eat? What part do I collect? How much should I use? What's the dosage like? And then you go, wow, okay, I got this edibility. I'm working this into my life. This is awesome. Now, how can I actually use these medicinally to treat myself and to treat people I care about? So I think it's a pretty natural process in the big picture. Like, if you asked me, I would say many of us on the planet have the same kinship with the botanical world and the natural world as people have always had. Okay, and try to develop that, find peace and strength. You'd laugh at me. There are certain plants I'll never harvest because they're my friends and I talk to them. But if you know me and you've had a class with me or you're one of my friends, you kind of will understand. Okay, well, I'm going to turn off my camera right now and I'm going to take a journey outside. And I think what I'd like to do is this. I'd love to see the Coltsfoot flower because it brought me hope. I'll try to show you plantain, Lanceleaf Plantain close up. And we'll talk about nature's Band-Aid and nature's sting cure. And I'm just going to see what I see out there. Maybe we'll go visit an oak tree, or maybe we'll take a look at a northern cedar. And these are things that I spoken about earlier, the cedar tree in particular with the cedar wood oil in the insect repellent. Okay, so if you have questions, you feel free. You can either forward them to Ron or Robin, or I will do my best to just keep an ear open while I'm gathering my stuff and getting ready to head outside. Sound good?
That's great,
Okay.
Scott. So we had a slight side conversation going on here. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's hard to quelch the side conversations when they're in chat. But it's a good thing because people just were asking about Earth Spirit programs that they might be able to participate in, both with kids or without kids. So I just wanted to see if you could give them a sense for what is coming up, obviously, in a few months, but later in the year, what Earth Spirit does that people might be able to access, and programs that you run that people might enjoy.
Oh, geez, that's great. Well, first of all, I should probably write this down somewhere. Maybe I'll send you something with a link. Our website is earthspiritedu.org. We've got a small staff, but this is kind of the big picture for us. We do a great deal of curriculum work in schools. We work heavily with the general public and run a public program series quarterly. On the quarterly basis, we do the programs typically either on a Saturday or a Sunday. Sometimes we run evening programs. We do that so that we can include families, children in particular. Sometimes if we get a group of a lot of kids and a lot of adults, we'll split, and adults go one way and kids go another way with one of our teachers. But I'll give you an example. We were going to do some ornithology work. We're right now in the midst of the migration. We always do a wild foraging program. Typically that wild foraging program happens in the fall. And you will actively participate in foraging wild plants. And typically we set up outdoor stations where we've utilized the plants that we collect to make something delicious to share with the attendants at the program. If you like fishing, every now and again, I've got a friend who he runs our expedition work out in Yellowstone National Park. If you want to take a Yellowstone trip, we've got two of the best Yellowstone naturalists on the planet who are deeply connected to park biologists and wolf packs out there. This summer, we're running a public program up into Algonquin Provincial Park in search of moose and wolf. Also going to be doing a pretty intense botanical study there. Moss and lichen, club moss are very diverse up in that area. I'm super excited to get out there. That's going to be a 5-day trip. We're going to run a loop in ultralight canoes. So you name it, Robin. I think the gamut for us goes like this. We've been trying to incorporate more adventure-based outdoor programming, Yellowstone, the Everglades, Algonquin, the Adirondacks. And locally, we always do seasonal wildlife programs. We do wildlife surveys as part of our program itinerary, where we go out and we pick up life signs and sightings so that we can have a broader understanding of what types of animals live in a certain type of environment. We try to cover the gambit. I can't think of, well, I don't know. It's hard, you know. We do mycology work, you know, not that we are mycology experts, but we always incorporate mushroom identification in on our hikes. Herbal identification is always part of a hike. You name it. I mean, I think for Earth Spirit, we like to think that we've been at this long enough that we can go just about anywhere here in the Northeast and have a pretty good understanding of what's happening, and explain that and make it interesting and fun for both adults and family. How's that?
Great, thanks, Scott. We had a couple other comments here. First of all, I want to note that Ron has posted the link to the Earth Spirit webpage.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Yeah, I want to let you guys know, make sure you will use that link, Earth Spirit EDU. If you just Google Earth Spirit, you are going to get something else. That is not what you're looking for. Okay, and then we also have Valerie noting that Johnson's Pharmacy in Mayville carries a lot of oils and herbs, and that mullein is good for earaches, mullein and garlic.
Oh, it sure is. That mullein garlic oil is one of my favorites that I make for earaches. And I'll tell you that tea tree is a wonder herb in my book. It's one of my personal favorites. You name it, infection, bacteria. I lean on that herb. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am just in the midst of, come on now. I think I lost it, didn't I? Dang.
No, we're still, so we don't have your video, we have your audio. And I want,
okay, that's good. Someone is calling me right now, and I'm hoping that, oh, there we go. They just went to my voicemail, and I'm back with you now, okay?
Great. So I just want to make a note here while Scott's moving around. A thanks to Colleen. Colleen is your fellow student, and she's hooking us up with the Zoom today. So thank you. Shout out to Colleen who made this.
Way to be, Colleen. Woo!
Yeah, Colleen has unlimited Zoom. Well, Waterkeeper is getting that, but they're still in process. So. And with that note, as you guys can tell, we're sort of figuring this out. Hopefully it's working well for everyone, but we're going to be doing this in the field, moving in the next session. So if anyone has equipment they'd like to share, suggestions they'd like to share, none of us are really production people here. So I'd like to draw on the expertise of the group here. If anyone can help out with, you know, we do have a GoPro 7 that was donated. We're going to try and get it to talk to the phone or the laptop and just set something up here for moving and live streaming in the field in a seamless way. So anyone who has advice on that or experience doing that, I just encourage you to email Ron or I, and we'll put you in the mix. We're leaning on everybody's expertise here. So we have a question here from Alex, our Waterkeeper intern, Alex. What would you say is the most versatile plant for use in your various remedies? Oh, do you have a favorite?
Sure. I'll tell you the ones I don't ever want to be without. Okay. I always want to have peppermint. Peppermint I can use externally for bruising. I can use it internally for digestive issues. I can use it externally for insects. Peppermint's a big one, and I wildcraft a lot of peppermint. I'm lucky enough to have it growing around a pond near me. My medicine cabinet should always have some tea tree. I want that with me. Plantain is one that I want to have around as well. Stings and bites, scrapes. Relative to external medicines, I think, Alex, those would probably be the ones that I would recommend. Hope that helps.
Great, thanks. So again, we have a little time here, folks, if you want to, think a little bit about what we've talked about so far. Alex says thank you. And either post your chat or unmute yourself and talk. That's fine too. I'm going to go.
It's funny as I'm walking around how challenging it is to find herbs that discussing, but fortunately we're here, it's spring, and we're getting some of them coming out, and that's just great. All right, I'm just going to try to drop down on this plantain that I found outside so you can see the plant, and I'll show you and tell you how I've utilized this one frequently. And I did talk to you a little bit about this relative to stings, but I'm just dropping the legs on a tripod now. Sugar. Okay, are you there? All right, well, I just had no equipment malfunction, but I don't think that's going to stop me, okay? I will do my best to get as close as I can. And all I'd like you guys to do is let me know if you can see this herb or not, okay? I'm going to try to get a real close up here. Okay, and then I'll hold steady. You got that one?
Yep, your video is good. I'm going to go off since you're back on.
All right. All right, well, we've got two non-native species of plantain that live in our environment here. The one you're looking at with the really long, thin leaves, this is called Lanceleaf Plantain. It's not a relative of the banana-like fruit, the plantain. In our neighborhood, the other non-native plantain is called broadleafed plantain and has a very wide leaf. They take a growth pattern growing from a central point that's called a basal rosette. And for me, this becomes one of the most important plants in the neighborhood. And playing with the kids all the time, they're always, they're always getting banged up, getting scraped up, getting cut up. And frequently, I got to be honest with you, almost on a daily basis in the summertime, I'm harvesting plantain for stings, scrapes, scratches, bites. So back to Alex's question, when it's available, Alex, I like to make good use of it. And I can make good use of it in the wintertime when I can't find it, if I can extract and then turn this into a viable salve. So, that being said, this is our girl right here, and I managed to find one, not many. And if I was going to make a poultice from this, okay, all I would do is simply share my thanks with the plant, harvest 10 leaves, crush the leaves in my hand. I sometimes want this to be in a wetter, pastier form, because although the venation will break and liquid will spread across the surface of this poultice that I'm going to apply to my skin, sometimes it's either too thick or what I'd like to do is get the plant components and chemical components to be moving further across my body. And that being said, I'll just take some of my drinking water and make a little paste out of it. Some people chew it, use their own saliva, and plaster it directly to their skin. Depending on the intensity of the wound site, I've often harvested, small baggies full or a bandana full of these leaves, made a paste, put it on my body, and then put a Band-Aid or a piece of gauze over that. Okay, so that, my friends, will be the look at our first herb, Lanceleaf Plantain. Okay? Now, just to complicate the situation a little bit, I'm getting a low power notice on my phone, so it appears that I have chewed up most of my phone battery during our time together. So if for any reason I disappear, it's only because I've got no more battery, and hopefully that will not occur. Okay, I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to just take you up for a quick look at plantain, or excuse me, at Coltsfoot. Along the way, potentially stop at a strawberry, Now this moving thing is probably making you real dizzy. So I'm gonna kill my camera right now, okay? And I'll be back with you in a second, and I'll take any questions as I'm walking. Thanks.
So yeah, if anyone has questions for Scott, we are working on the motion thing. We definitely need a camera with stability control. So when we do the full couple hours in the field, you guys aren't bouncing all over the place. So we'll be working on that for everybody. So if anyone has questions for this part, you can post them.
And when you figure that out, I'd love to be part of that conversation, because a majority of what I'm gonna be forced to do is do exactly what you're doing, Robin, is heading into the field and doing lots of field work.
So another thing that we've all been discussing here, that actually you guys, participants should know, normally we're limited to say 25 people or so just because of the nature of parking and hiking. And I guess one upside of doing all of this online is that we don't have any such limitations. So at some point here today, we were up to 33 people. I guess our actual class, is 24. So that's pretty cool. We had some guests joining us. One thing Scott and I discussed was maybe sharing our classes. So if we decide to do some more of these, that maybe you would have access not only to the Water Academy class, but also to the also to maybe some of Scott's field ecology sessions. And more importantly, I know we have several teachers in our group here, my teacher friends. I know you guys, especially at high school level, may be struggling for ways to keep your kids engaged remotely. We're looking at allowing your students to participate if you think you might be interested in that. So maybe some or all of your students, if you think they might be interested in some of these sessions that we're running, or even, obviously the version that we're taping, but the live stream is more engaging. So if that's something that would interest you to kind of click in your students to a ready-made program that's happening live, we'd love to be able to provide that for you. So let us know if that's something that's of interest to you. Probably not at the pre-K level, but
all right, I'm walking up to the end of my driveway, and I found one lone little deposit flower. Where are you, my friend? Oh, so funny. Well, she's gone. I wonder if she closed for the day. Well, anyway, I'll tell you what, Coltsfoot, and you saw the Coltsfoot that I had up on the table mixed with all that. Coltsfoot is one of those early spring bloomers. Typically, it's the one I often see first. I'll see snowdrops first, and then I'll see Coltsfoot. Trying to get you back on screen. Again, the old equipment malfunction. I'll tell you what, if I can make a recommendation to anybody who's got to deal with a cell phone, invest in a quality phone holder where you're attaching it to your tripod. That's going to be critical for success. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump the ditch and let's go say hi to the white pines.
we had a question here more for Ron and I. How do you find the tape?
When I'm walking.
Oh, sorry. How do you find the taped classes after today? We're actually going to send, we're going to attempt to share that with everybody by email, but I'll have to look at the size. The size may be too big. What we'll try to do probably is make a link to it. Ron, maybe we could even post that, somewhere on the Waterkeeper website or something. We'll find a way that you can access it easily, and we'll email that to you. Now it looks like we may have.
Awesome. Well, here, I'll come in, sweetie.
So Scott, I think we're losing you. It's saying
Unmuted.
bandwidth is low. So it may be the distance from your house.
Oh, okay.
I got you now, but you're coming in and out. I wouldn't go much
I
farther.
think yeah, I'm getting the same from you. So I'm going to head back down there and I'll stop. And if you get better bandwidth from me, you let me know. And I'll do a little visit. So this is where I live. This is my long driveway. This is my neighbor's barn. Hi, Mickey.
We've got your audio
I'm kind
for
of
now.
back here in the stick. Audio's gone?
Audio's good.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Audio's good.
Oh, you can? You can hear me now?
Yep.
Awesome. How about the moving picture thing? Is that brutal?
It's choppy enough not to be brutal.
Okay. I'm trying to hold steady. All right, everybody. I'm getting back toward home in my barn. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk over to one of the many white pine trees that are surrounding the house I live in. And we'll do a brief little white pine lesson. I'm going to bring you up close to the needles. You know, you can appreciate when you're identifying a pine tree that the needles on the pines will come in little bundles when they attach to the twig. And the bundles either come in groups of 2, groups of 3, or groups of 5. The white pine in particular, in our area, I guess, and in all areas, I'm going to just remove one group of needles. Thank you. When I count the needles out in my hand, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 needles. I was introduced to this tree as the tree of peace for the Iroquois people. The pines themselves are one of the top 4 survival foods on the planet. And oftentimes when I talk to people about using pines as food, not necessarily medicine, they look at me like I'm insane. And I laugh and go, well, let's try a few. Let's harvest red pine, Scotch pine, see if we can find black pine and white pine and compare. This is the only one that volunteers are ever willing to munch on. It's loaded with vitamin C. So relative to having a immune boosting capacity, I'd say it's there for sure. Obviously it's coarse, takes your body some energy to break it down. But nonetheless, if I'm doing a wild edible class, I can't walk by this tree without giving it a mention. So the evergreen, the white pine with 5 needles per bundle, Pinus strobus, becomes at times a major player in our forests when we're dealing with trees that are coniferous. If they can get a head start on the hardwood trees, they'll persist. This was a down. Yep.
Could you hold it a little bit farther away? It's blurring out.
Sure. All right.
And
Tell me when it's good. Say, okay, that's good.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go. And now people can see the long, soft needles.
That's good right there. Good. That gives, yeah, I'm about. Yeah.
I do
Long
want
and soft is the key, because if I'm gonna eat it. Wait, are you serious? You want me to eat this? Thank you. Well, so the long soft needles, when it comes to edibility, of course, just appreciate this, that they're tolerable. You're not going to stab yourself in the tongue. You can break them down enough and you can actually eat them. We've done practice runs ourselves at our spirit here of, you know, spending a day or two just eating wild food, and white pine is always one I go for. Never seem to be able to fill my belly up with it. But nonetheless, I value it. As do I value the spruces and the balsam fir. Their sap can be collected. And I'm underneath a little spruce tree right here, so I'm gonna point up. Their saps can be collected and actually used as a liquid Band-Aid They'll kill bacteria and microbes. And if you know that product, liquid bandage that comes in a glass bottle in the store, that's where they got this idea from, taking the pitch of a spruce or taking the pitch of more frequently a balsam fir and using that to close the wound and kind of glue the wound shut. I've got good news. I think what I'd like to do, if you guys are okay, is because I'm losing battery, that I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Around me.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, we good? Okay. The foxes, just so you know, their pups are out and their pups are around right now. Some have yet to be born, but they're around. Caught a glimpse of my first fox pup yesterday. That's super exciting news. The red squirrels, I haven't seen a red squirrel in upwards of 10 days. They're all nursing right now. They also just gave birth. The wood ducks are back. I've got 2 pair of wood ducks on my pond at home. That's really exciting. I think both pair are going to stick around and potentially nest. So we got that waterfowl migration in full swing. I saw my first yellow-bellied sapsucker, and eastern bluebirds are in. Cedar waxwings are in. So this is all like really awesome precursor events before the botanical world really rips open. So just appreciate this. It's coming. And grab your Peterson field guides or your Newcomb field guides and your edible guides and your medicinal guides and start to practice and start to play. That's what I would recommend. I think we're going to have a little bit of time on our hands in the near future, and I think it's a great way to pass the time and also a great way to deepen our connection with the earth and I guess parallel the relationships that people have had with the botanical world as long as we've been here. All right, I just want to say thank you to Robin and to Ron for inviting me here, for having me participate. This has been an interesting experience done remotely. My hope is that you enjoyed yourself today, and I'm looking forward to meeting you down the trail somewhere, whether it's at ECC on campus so I can get you out in the field, or who knows, maybe in the back country somewhere, paddling and enjoying life.
Great, thank you, Scott. Does anyone else have like last question before we say goodbye to Scott? We're happy? All right, thanks so much, Scott. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Ronnie, thanks a million, buddy.
We've got lots of thank yous coming up on your chat. Lots of
Awesome.
So
Well, a big hug to everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay well. Remember, kindness goes a million miles, and don't forget to be loving. Love conquers fear any day. So get out here and enjoy. It'll help, it'll just, I think, help us blossom too.
Okay.
All right. Well, Robin and Ron, thanks again. Hopefully I'll be seeing you soon.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See
Okay.
ya.
Before you guys sign off, we have just a quick business items. So we're working on our root down farm trip for next Thursday. So we will get an email out to you in the next day or so. Yeah, we've got lots of people on the chat. We'll get an email out to you on the next day or so and let you know, details for that. But you're going to get an invitation, just like you did for this one. So this is going to be the kind of the standard for us for the time being. I think that's it. So folks, we're going to stay on. If you are an ECC registered student, we're not going to stay long, guys. I know it's already after 6, but everyone else can sign off. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye. And yeah, ECC students, if you could stay on just for a couple of minutes so we can check, Ron and I can check in with you on your final projects. So I'm gonna give folks a couple minutes to sign off, and ECC folks, please stay on. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us and kind of bearing with us while we kind of work all this out. But I think it's kind of great to get our minds onto something else during this time. So thanks again for joining all of us.
Awesome. Okay, well, so it's fine if folks are still on. That's totally fine. But ECC guys, I just wanted to mention, Ron, I think we have done all the journal sheets. Is that true?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to collect the journal sheets. You probably saw that your midterm grades went out. A couple of you were missing assignments, and that's affecting your grades. So please talk to me. I know one of you sent me an email. I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, grading for midterm. I just want you to know where you are. Journal sheets. If you guys could either scan an email or take photos and emails, that'd be great. And then whoever's still with us here, my screen is acting weird. Let me see if I can see you guys. If you guys could turn on your video, Colleen, are you still on with us? Can you turn people's videos on if they want to be on? Hi, Kayla.
Hi.
So you guys don't have to be on, like if you're taking a bath or whatever, but I don't care. But if you want to be on, you can be on video as long as you're here with us. And I just want to check in with you guys on your final projects. So if it doesn't matter who goes first, if you guys just want to tell me how things are going. I mean, I know things have been crazy, so if you haven't done anything, that's fine. Just say I haven't done anything.
How are we doing this? I can go for.
Go for it.
Ariana here. So we filled out all of our sheets and everything. We're gonna Skype after this. But our biggest problem right now is we're kind of in a rut because our documentary, like we were going on filming interviews, but right now is not really the time to ask all these old people, can we come to your home? You know, it's a little,
yes,
like, the virus. So we were trying to find a way around it, maybe do some video, like phone calls or something, but well, that's where we kind of are right now, trying to figure out how to move forward.
The free Zoom is pretty good for interviews, and you can record. So if they're